Welcome to The Business Strategist, the show for CEOs and founders ready to scale fast, lead smarter, and build a business that doesn't rely on them. I'm Adam Strong, award-winning strategist, former elite athlete, international speaker, and 3 times best-selling author. After 3 decades in business, I know exactly what it takes to grow, scale, and exit with impact. Each week, I dive into real conversations with industry experts, bold entrepreneurs, and clients navigating the uphill struggles of business, giving you the tools and the strategies to create more profit, more freedom, and more impact. Let's get into it. Hey guys, I just wanted to grab your attention because we've just created a brand new resource for you guys called the Exit Playbook, how to shift from operator to visionary leader. Now, this was based on a podcast that I did a few months ago and is the leadership blueprint for being able to help yourself successfully exit your business.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Now, we go into many different things. We're going into some of the common symptoms of why founders get trapped in operations and what to look for and the impact that it actually has on you. We also go into some deep dive exercises that addresses some of the fears, some of the reflections, also how to basically let go of some of the control that you have. But more importantly, how to shift your identity within your business and how to align your strategy to your exit and how to challenge your belief systems, more importantly. Listen, it is a free playbook. The link is in the show description notes. Enjoy. I think you're going to find it a really useful resource. Take care. What's the real cost of being a soul-sucking CEO, and how do you know that you are the problem? Well, today, ladies and gentlemen, I have the opportunity to be with my really good friend, Garry Ridge. Now, I've known Garry for the best part of around 4 or 5 years. We were introduced through mutual friends, Chester Elton, who is a New York Times best-selling author. Garry was the former chairman of the company WD-40. So if you don't know what WD-40 is, you just go to your garage or you got a toolbox. It's the Jiffy can, which is, blue and yellow. And what's really interesting is that Garry's got a really interesting story. He co-authored a book with Ken Blanchard back in 2009. He also wrote another book called Tribal Culture or Tribe Culture when he was CEO at WD-40. And we also had the opportunity to meet up in person in London just a few weeks ago, depending on when you're listening to this episode, of course. And it was the very first time that we got to meet up in person. And I love meeting people face to face. And it was a real privilege to meet Garry. And he has such great wisdom, such great golden nuggets when it comes to leadership. And his latest book, Any Dumbass Can Do It, by the way, highly recommended. I'm on chapter 3 almost. And he's got, honestly, this book is not only is it got some great golden nuggets, Garry shares a lot of insights and about his learning moments from when he was the former CEO of WD-40. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be going through lots of great insights about how to become a good leader. And I'm going to be really challenging Garry when it comes to really understanding his decision-making processes, how he felt emotionally at certain points in his 25-year career. But more importantly, we're going to have fun. So listen, dive in, make sure you got your notebook and pen handy. What I would highly endorse you to do is to make sure that you rewind and go back to this. Because I don't know about you, but whenever I read a book, whenever I listen to a podcast, I re-listen to it 2 or 3 times over and I pick up new things. So anyway, Garry, welcome to the show.
G'day, Adam. I think I'm scared now after that introduction of the questions you're going to ask me, but we'll do our best to knock it out of the park.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, we had such a great time in London for a good 90 minutes. I mean, it was super fun just seeing you there in person. And we obviously go to the same hairdresser.
We do. Well, we have the same barber. His name is Dr. Gillette.
Absolutely. Honestly, it's been great. And for if you don't know who Garry is, by the way, we also done a numerous collaborations where we've done various summits, and also we recorded a podcast back in the very early episode called "Don't Become a Soul Sucking CEO," which was with Al. Al is no longer with us, unfortunately. We've got a new associate, and what's his name, Garry?
Alec.
Alec. And what does Alec
Smart
represent?
Alec. Smart Alec. Yeah. He's the soul-sucking CEO of Fear Inc. So he has these undesirable leadership behaviors that create cultures of toxic, where of people are not treated as they should, and the environment is toxic. We'll get rid of him for a little while, put him to sleep.
It's always good to have fun. Anyway, listen, I'm looking forward to today. It's well overdue, I would say. First of all, congratulations on the new book.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not your first.
No. But I was very, very honored and touched. We were number 10 on the 150 bestseller list on the USA Today in the first week. So
amazing.
So now I can actually say I'm a USA Today bestselling author, which is okay.
Yeah, that's not too shabby, is it?
No.
Not for an everyday Australian.
That's right. For the dean of dumbassery.
Absolutely. And we'll talk about that, by the way, the dean of dumbassery and the whole concept of that, because honestly, I absolutely love it. I think it's fantastic. You've been gone from WD-40 for how many years now?
It'll be 3 years this August.
3 years. Okay. It's amazing how time flies by. It's just ridiculous. But listen, you spent 25 years. It's a long time, right? It's a really, really long time. So I'd love to kind of start with that, if I may, because I know that obviously fellow Australian, moved to America, I guess living the American dream, whatever that looks like. But listen, I would love to learn more about, because I know that you represented, you were working for WD-40 before you took on the CEO role anyway, and I think it was international expansion. Is that what you're working in? Is that right?
Yeah, I was with the company for 35 years. The 10 years before I was given the privilege and honored to lead the company, I started in Australia in 1987, opened our Australian subsidiary, did a lot of work in Asia Pacific. In 1994, I was invited to move to the US to head up our global expansion program. We had a dream, which was to take the blue and yellow can with a little red top to the world. So I moved in 1994, and then in 1997, the then CEO retired, and the board of directors of a U.S. public company felt that some dumbass might be a good person to lead the company. So I was given the opportunity.
Well, that's a big, big privilege anyway. I want to start off by the beginning of your career, because, I love you as a person. I think, what I love about you is that you are not ego-driven. You're just an everyday bloke, as we would like to call it in England, and you don't see yourself as anyone special. And I suppose taking on the role of a multi-billion-dollar company, has its responsibilities. But I'd love for you to share with the audience what you felt your limiting beliefs were when you took on that role, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, I think, if I go back to the start of my journey as CEO, I was very clear around how we could make the brand more famous around the world. And, we had a great team of people. So from a marketing standpoint, I think we knew how to identify the end users, to make them aware, and to get distribution. The thing that was really on my mind was, we're going to be a global company. The sun was never going to set on our can. So how do we build a culture where, people felt and knew that they belonged, they felt and knew that they mattered and made a difference? It was a place where there was a low level of fear and a high level of learning, and where people could actually make choices and decisions without what I called quacking up the hierarchy. And obviously, I had some leadership experience, but not what I needed to be able to do that. And it was when I got the opportunity to meet my mentor and my dear friend, Dr. Ken Blanchard, the guru of servant leadership, is when that journey, really enlightened journey, started, which was so beneficial and powerful.
Did you feel like when they offered you the role of CEO, was you reluctant to kind of say, well, I feel a bit out of my depth there. I don't feel like you have the necessary experience or skill set, or maybe even mindset to, kind of maybe push on. I mean, I know that you talked about strategy and a vision, which is amazing to have, but was there any kind of like reluctance around that?
No, I don't think I've ever been a sufferer of imposter syndrome.
Mm.
I certainly, and I think that was my benefit because I knew then I didn't have everything I needed to be successful. And that was really the spark and the catalyst around the fact that I needed all the help I could get. And I think I shared with you, I used to introduce myself as, G'day, I'm Garry Ridge. I'm the CEO of WD-40 Company. I'm consciously incompetent, probably wrong and roughly right, and I need all the help I could get. And I did. And I think that was a real strength that when I look back at it, that I didn't know I had, but what I did know is that I couldn't do it on my own. And that turned out to be the whole foundation of the culture we built.
That's some good stuff. I mean, leading a multi-billion-dollar company for over 2 decades, how did you, from your perspective, how did you stay mentally resilient without burning out or feeling numb in any kind of way? Because, I mean, there's a lot of pressure, isn't there, Garry? Shareholders, the C-suite looking after a lot of employees. I mean, there's a lot of pressures, whether it be internally or whatever, or things that go through your mind. How did you deal with the resilience side of stuff?
Well, I think, there is a lot of responsibility. I clearly understood that every morning that I woke up, I had the opportunity to either enhance or hurt people's lives. And, it goes back to something that I read early on when I was talking about the culture. The Dalai Lama said our purpose in life is to make people happy. If we can't make them happy, at least don't hurt them. And, I'm not a man of steel. I had ups and downs, but clearly I always had that true north around get in the game, play your best game every game, and there's a chance you'll get picked on the A team. And there were times that were harder than others, but, I'm really quite an optimistic person. And I often say this too will pass as long as you have the clear strategic foundation and you're brave enough not to get pushed off it for unnatural reasons. And that can happen, particularly as a public company. I sat across from shareholders who really were trying to encourage us to do different things, not because it was the best interest of the long term, but it was going to be a short term result. And we always resisted that. And I often said, we never gave out quarterly guidance as a public company. I said, we'll give out annual guidance and I'll tell you where we're going and where we want to be in 5 years. But we're not going to be pressured by running a company in 90-day intervals, because then we will make bad decisions.
During your tenure, if you like, there must have been a lot of tough leadership decisions that you had to make as a CEO. What would you say was a tough leadership decision that really stood out for you? And how did you carry the emotional weight of that? Is there anything that sticks out in mind?
I think that we make decisions tougher if we don't do a few things. So, I always was saying, let's gather the facts, let's get good advice, let's understand the impact, both short and long term. But, you do have to have a heart of gold and a backbone of steel. And, there are some decisions you would prefer not to make. But if you're acting on behalf of the business as a whole, then you've got to make those decisions. Now, I think the important thing is not just to make the decision, but to be able to share what is the why behind what you're doing. And I think if you do that, even when some things hurt a little bit, and fortunately, we didn't have to do a lot of things that hurt, but then people get it. That it's not just what do we want to do, but what's the why behind what we're doing.
I mean, there doesn't necessarily have to be any hurt when you're making a decision, does there? But I mean, when you are making certain decisions, it might not be taken with love and kindness. It might be that someone's lives are affected, or the fact that you're going in a different direction and one cohort or department is not happy with that direction. Do you know what I mean? There's going to be tension within certain cohorts. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the other thing that's important around that is we based all of our decisions on our values in the organization. So we had a hierarchical set of values that were clearly defined, and they were in place to protect people and set them free. So, we all made decisions from the same reference point. Now, whether you were sitting in our offices in Spain or France or Portugal or the UK or Australia or Shanghai or San Diego or New York or wherever, we all made decisions based on the same set of values, and they were hierarchical. So that's why I say that an organization's values are there to protect people and set them free. So there was never really, if we made a decision that looked against the values, I think that's when we'd have pushback. But we'd always discipline ourselves. Are we doing the right thing? Will this create a positive, lasting memory? Will it make it better than it is today? Is it going to support the individual and the tribe? Will it help to enhance the WD-40 economy? All of these values were taken into consideration in every decision we made.
America leads the world in medicine development. It matters. We get new medicines first, nearly 3 years faster. 5 million Americans go to work because we make medicines here at home. And not relying on other countries keeps us safe. But China is racing to overtake us. Will we let them, or will we choose to stay ahead? When America leads, America cures. Let's tell Washington to keep us in the lead.
Learn how at americacures.com. Paid for by pharma.
What was the feeling that you wanted to let your employees or your team members leave when they went home to their families? What was the message that you wanted to send to them?
I belong and I matter. People care about me. That's it. It's very simple. Or people in organizations to build great culture is pretty simple. Do I know? Am I treated? And do I feel like I belong? Do I know? Am I treated? And is it clear that I am making a difference and I matter to the organization? Am I able to make decisions because I have a clearly defined set of values? And is there a low level of fear in the organization because we value learning? That's it. It's actually as simple as that. This is simple, but it's not easy. And time is not your friend.
It's easy to talk about these things, but to put them into practice, as you mentioned, it's much more difficult in hindsight.
When I was a young lad back in Australia in high school, my science teacher, Adam, gave me a petri dish. And the science teacher said, what we're going to do is we're going to grow culture in this petri dish. So what's important? Number one, what are the ingredients that you need to put in that petri dish to build a great culture? Now, if you're building a great culture in an organization, the ingredients are you have to have a people-first mindset. You need to be a coach, not a manager. You have to respect accountability. You have to have a clearly defined, authentic purpose. You have to have an organization that's transparent and simple. You have to have learning moments that reduce fear. And you have to care about your people, be candid with your people, respect accountability, and make sure that we understand what responsibility is. So they're the ingredients. Mm-hmm. Now, the second thing is, as the owner of the Petri dish, you have to ensure that you continually feed the good ingredients and you're brave enough to attack the toxins. Mm-hmm. So, if you've got a people-first mindset ingredient and you've got someone in the organization that's ego-driven and not about the people they lead, you have to attack that. But if you let that toxin get in the Petri dish, it'll eat those ingredients pretty quickly and you end up with a Petri dish full of slush. Yeah. And it's a slushy environment. So that's what you need to do.
And it's interesting because my next question was all around toxic culture. What is the emotional cost to people within the culture if there is a toxic culture and I walked into a toxic culture? Maybe it be departmental, maybe it would be within a country that maybe was not aligned to the values of the WD-40 company. And you're like, this doesn't feel right. This is completely misaligned. What were the warning signs as a CEO that you were looking for? And you thought, yeah, this is toxic. What did you do?
Well, the warning signs are firstly when ego eats empathy instead of empathy eating ego. So it's all about me, me, me. The leaders are micromanagers. They want to have their fingers in everything. They think they're corporate royalty. They're a master of control. They think they have all the answers, even the wrong ones. They must always be right. They hate feedback and they don't keep their commitments. So if those ingredients are in the petri dish, you've got a really toxic culture. Now, the problem with that is that people aren't enjoying their job if they're in a toxic culture. And, this was worked out in 384 BC. In 384 BC, Aristotle said, pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work. So if you're working in a toxic culture, there's no pleasure in the job, so you're going to get a crappy outcome. Now, if you go into an organization that has an engaging culture, you'll see that the leaders involve and love their people. They're always in servant leadership mode. They're expected to be competent, so they're forever learners. They're always looking for it. They have emotional intelligence. They're spending a lot of time in the stinky locker room with their people, not running on the field and trying to play the game. They have a heart of gold, but they've got a backbone of steel as well. So they're dependable. They're champions of hope. They know micromanagement is not scalable. They do what they say they're going to do, and they treasure the gift of feedback.
I'm a big philosopher with regards to if their culture is toxic or the fact that maybe they're not going in the right direction, that the CEO should always get their hands dirty. What's your thoughts about that? Do you think that there's any truth in that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're not corporate royalty. And as I talk about, we need to, it's the difference between being a coach and a manager. Like, Adam, you walk into your new role today and I'm there and I say, welcome to the company, Adam. I'm your manager, right? Well, what about if you walk in, you say, g'day, Adam. Welcome. I'm your coach. My role here is to help you win. So what we first got to do is we've got to define what winning looks like together. What does an A look like? And now what am I going to do? Well, firstly, I'm going to spend a lot of time on the sideline, observing the play, looking for opportunities to help you play a better game. Adam, I'm never going to run on the field and micromanage you and steal the ball from you and try and play your game. You have to play your game. Adam, I'm never, ever going to go to the podium and steal your prize. I want you to have the benefit of winning. And I'm going to spend a lot of time in the stinky locker room with you because that's where we really build psychological safety and trust.
I think that's great. There are so many businesses out there, global businesses, big and small, that do completely the polar opposite. I'm sure you've got friends that's still in corporate America or corporate Australia, and they whine about their crappy job, about the fact that their manager or CEO has stolen their glory, whatever it is, right? Which is sad. So let's define, when you think of the word win, because when I think of the word win, automatically I think, okay, what am I winning against? Are you a competition to me? What am I comparing with? So could we define what the word win means? Are we trying to win to be a better person? What's your definition of win?
So you follow soccer.
Football.
So what would happen? Football. You follow football.
Yep.
So if there was no goalposts on the football field, would you know how to win?
No. So
winning is understanding what we're trying to achieve together. What are the goals?
Got it.
That's it. Now, unfortunately, in a lot of organizations, and I tell the story, let's all pretend we're sitting in some wonderful stadium waiting to watch a great game of football. And the team runs, and here we are. We're all excited. You and I are in the bleachers, and we're pumped up, and our team's going to run onto the field. And the team runs onto the field, and someone forgot to put up the goalposts. And the coaches are asleep in the locker room, and the umpires and the referees decided not to come to the game. So what happens to the team? They run around the field, get exhausted, and achieve nothing. So it's pretty simple. Are the goalposts up? Are the coaches there to help them win? And the referees, in other words, are the values in place to help them play their game?
CEO, I suppose it can be seen as one of these titles, privileged titles, if you want to call it that. But On a personal note, how did you emotionally separate your identity as a person from the role so that you could lead with clarity and no ego? I know you kind of touched it a little bit about it previously, but I'd love to know more about it from you personally. Was there a separation in terms of identity, or was it just kind of Garry being Garry?
It's not being afraid of being vulnerable. It's being with the people. I rode a horse into Times Square in a suit of armor. Now, tell me, is that being vulnerable? Absolutely. I mean, I spent time getting your shoes dirty is so important. I spent so much. I would prefer to be on the office floor, spending time with my people. If you've read the first chapter in my book, the first chapter is, "Are you okay?" Now, if my people aren't okay, if they're not feeling like they belong, if they don't know that they matter, then how are they going to do their best work? So, I think it's just being. We're not corporate royalty. I didn't have a big office. My office was 10 by 12, the same size as everybody else. I never had a private parking space. I didn't have someone bring me coffee to my office. I went down to the cafeteria and sat with people and had my coffee there. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Yeah, but even a customer, if I go buy something or whatever it might be, you'll still see the parking spaces with reserved for CEO. And it drives me crazy. I'm like, why is this not a customer space? Why didn't the CEO go park over there around the back of the parking lot, right in front of the front of the offices? That drives me insane. I just don't understand that.
Well, if you want the best parking space, get in early.
With regards to the smartest CEOs on the planet, I mean, you've done pretty well for yourself. You were voted number 4 by Inc. magazine back in 2000 for one of the smartest CEOs, one of the top CEOs in the world, global, which is a real privilege. What would you say a lot of the smartest CEOs get completely wrong and still get wrong to this day?
It's not about you. It's about the privilege you have to lead the other people. And that's what it's about. It's not about you. I mean, certainly, as much as I say, I'm the dean of dumbassery in the fact that I know that I don't have all the answers. But, I have some smarts. I did lead a public company for 25 years that went from a market cap of $300 million to $3.6 billion that expanded to 176 countries around the world. But I didn't do that on my own. I did that with the help of many, many, many really smart people. So, but we did it again, and I'm just repeating myself around the fact that this simplicity around, do people know that they're treasured, that you're there to help them, instead of the CEOs that don't do that. I mean,
there's plenty
I don't
of them
understand.
out there. Yeah. It's an interesting connotation. When you obviously took on the role of WD-40, so I'm backtracking here. What were the big gaps that you felt that kind of needed to be improved upon, apart from obviously culture? You've obviously measured culture on a number of occasions, but what was one of the first things that you did to try to make things better or improve upon what they've already got in terms of infrastructure?
As a chef, I know flavor doesn't begin in the kitchen. It begins on the land. And Westhome's nature-led Australian Wagyu is a story written in the landscape of Northern Australia. Cooking is storytelling, and Westhome Wagyu carries a story of Northern Australia itself. Raw, powerful, and deeply authentic. It's a testament to the passion and care raised in the rhythm of Northern Australia. I'm Chef Maylin from 88 Club in Los Angeles, and I invite you to visit westhome.com/Maylin to learn more. And taste a story only Westhome nature-led Australian Wagyu can tell. That's westhome.com/MEILIN.
Well, let me be clear. WD-40, when I took over, was a very fine company. There was nothing fundamentally wrong with it.
Right.
What it wasn't was a company to achieve what it needed to achieve into the future. It was a business that was primarily US-centric, focused. And to be the global company, we had to be something different to that. I was fortunate enough to have a strong foundation to then be able to turn us into, or help turn us into, not a US company, but a global company. And the basis to do that was building this culture that could go around the world, because it wasn't going to happen from some, Eiffel Tower in San Diego. Had to distribute. The first thing we did was get very clear what our purpose was. So if you're building an organization, what's your purpose? Is it clearly defined? Then what are your values? Do you have a clearly defined set of values? Now, do you have a clear and understandable strategic plan? Now, how are you going to execute against that strategic plan? And that's where the culture piece comes in, because you can have the best strategic plan in the world, but if you only have a low percentage of your people in the organization who are enthusiastic about executing it, you're not going to maximize the outcome of your organization. So purpose, values, strategy, execution, strategic plan, learning moments, all on a platform of care, candor, accountability, and responsibility. There it is. Now go to work.
Love it. With any company, it goes through tough times, doesn't it, Garry? Whether it be economic slump of 2008, many different factors that affected, the share price or the profitability margins or whatever it is. Was there any one kind of big thing that really affected the company? How did you handle that as a CEO? Obviously, there's things that you can't control, but how did you keep the culture glued together so that people didn't feel insecure? I mean, the first thing that comes to people's minds is, am I going to lose my job? Right? So how did you mirror that? How did you kind of inject empowerment and positivity without kind of admitting that there is going through some real challenges?
Transparency. We're all in this together. We went through, in 2008, 2009, the, global financial crisis, so named.
Yep.
We came out very quickly with, these are the things that are important to us. This is what we're going to do. We need to be in this together. And if we're going to hurt, it's better that all of us hurt a little than a few of us hurt a lot. So, when we made decisions around things, it wasn't a matter of sacrificing a few people, but, and it was actually an interesting time, because we came through that very, very well. And in fact, the year after, because we didn't lay anybody off and we kept our tribe together, we had the best year in the company's history, because we didn't have to retool our business. But we made some decisions. We said, okay, maybe we don't need 5 subscriptions to the Wall Street Journal. Maybe we could get away with 1. We implemented a thing called the Stupid Policies Program, where we said, let's take an opportunity to have everyone in the organization look at everything we do and tell us what's stupid. And if it's stupid, it's costing money and it's not adding value. Let's get rid of it. But we never laid one person off. In my 25 years as CEO, we never laid anyone off through any business event. And that doesn't mean people didn't leave the company. Sure, some people who left the company, or if they weren't performing and they weren't happy, they would go work somewhere else. But we always said that we've never laid anybody off. It's better that all of us suffer a little than a few people suffer a lot.
It's a really good point. And I love the fact that you're all stuck together. And the one word which was really, really great, which was transparency. But I suppose there's this element of ownership and accountability from everyone, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. If people know the issue and know what they need to do, you're going to get them to help you do it. I mean, I can't do it on my own. And It's amazing how people are willing to help you if you ask them for help.
With regards to building the tribe culture, as you mentioned back in 2019, I think it was, how did you handle what I call the outliers, right? The people that didn't align with your values or resisted shifts and whatever it is. How did you deal with those individuals?
Well, I mean, once you create a culture, people either like it or they don't. And some people self-select it out. If people were really against the culture, then they're not going to be happy in the organizations. My conversation would be, you're not going to be happy here. You need to find a place to be happy, because this is what we stand for. So again, not protecting your own comfort zone at the expense of other people's development, having those conversations and setting clear guidelines and paths along the way. It gets back to that thing about transparency and openness, and this is what we stand for, and I'm hoping you'll be here, and if you are, we're going to do our best to do great things together.
If we've got some listeners here that are, I suppose, they're sold on the idea of creating culture, which we know increases valuation. We know that it can lead to a lot of benefits, but they just don't have a clue about where to start. What would be your top advice to those people?
I could be selfish and say, buy the book. Because I lay it out there in, 265 pages of scar tissue. They could also go onto my website, www.thelearningmoment.net, and take the dumbass quiz. And if you take the dumbass quiz, it will tell you where you are on your scale of dumbassery, but you'll also get emailed to you from me a playbook of what are the 3 or 4 things you can start doing right away to start building a great culture.
I still can't get over the fact of a fun title. What did you say? The Dean of Dumbassery, wasn't it?
Yeah, I am the Dean of Dumbassery.
Demon of Dumbassery. So tell us a little bit more. How does this book, how is it different from the other 2 books that you've written in terms of practical insights? How do they differ?
Yeah, it's a journey. It's a 25-year journey it's full of stories. I wrote the book in the way, and I had a great writing partner, Martha Finney, in a way that you were having it's like when you and I sat down at that hotel. I wanted the book to be like you and I were having a conversation, and that's the way I wrote it, and we wrote it. So it's a leadership journey conversation, and it's full of real practical examples of how we learned from the journey that we're on.
How does one become a Duke of Dumbassery? You mentioned the quiz, which is a great resource. Tell us a bit more about what you're envisaging.
Well, I hope that it will help people understand that they can build great cultures. But I've also on LinkedIn got the School of Dumbassery. So if people want to go onto LinkedIn and join the group called the School of Dumbassery, I'm sharing on there different learning and hoping that we'll learn from a community of dumbasses on how we can be better leaders. So sign up for the School of Dumbassery and start participating, and let's learn from you as well.
Love it. Love it. And for you guys that are listening in, by the way, and you're eager to join the group of dumbasses, you're welcome to click on the link below, because we will put a link to Garry's book and also the community as well, which I would highly endorse you go and do, because again, you get to interact with, a CEO that has quarter of a century of wisdom and experience. But more importantly, it's not about him. It's about the community, which is, I wanted to point that out. And I'm sure that Garry will probably agree with that, right, Garry?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's what we can learn from each other.
Yeah, very good. So in terms of when you took your role on in 97, right, and you look at where you are today, even though you're not working for WD-40 anymore, when you look back and you think, wow, I've come quite far, right? It's like 28, 30 years difference or whatever it might be. How do you feel when you look back at that? What kind of feelings do you get? And, is there anything that surprised you from where you are right now to kind of when you started back in 97 as a CEO?
Wow, there's a lot in that question. I feel like I've done my 25-year apprenticeship in leadership, and that's why I wrote the book, to put it to work. But, I joke, I went from a VIP to a PIP, what was perceived as a very important person to a previously important person. And, and people could look at it that way, but I think that I have work to do. My purpose now is I help leaders build cultures of belonging where love, forgiveness, and learning inspire a happier, more connected world. And all the work that I do now, I coach CEOs. I have 7 CEOs that I currently coach. I'm on the board of a couple of companies. I speak on this subject around the world. As you know, I get the chance to talk to great people like you that share this out with others. And I'm only doing it because I believe that business has an accountability, responsibility, and an opportunity to make the world a better place. And they can do that if we actually send people home happy, because happy people build happy communities build happy countries, and happy countries build a happy world. And we need a happier world right now. So the little bit that I do every day, I hope is contributing to that.
I love that. That is First of all, it's a great round off from our conversation, Garry. Just wanted to say that because you're right. I mean, the world's in a very funny place right now. I think you're right. I think, we all need to improve. And, I think you made a really valid point. And it doesn't matter who you are or where you're at, treat people the way that you wish to be treated yourself. And
exactly.
It's not rocket science, ladies and gents.
No.
It's simple. It's simple.
It's simple. It's not easy. And time is not your friend. But you got to start somewhere.
Absolutely. Very good. Last closing moments. Any final thoughts from our conversation? And 5 top tips for maybe inexperienced leaders that are listening to this and are kind of inspired by your wisdom and experience, Garry.
Well, I think number 1 is get clear about your purpose. Do you have a clearly defined purpose? Ask yourself a question. Am I being the person I want to be right now? And then make a list of who is that person, who do you want to be. Remember, it's not about you, it's about the people you have the privilege to lead. And be the leader that you wish you had. And it's about the people that you can help step into a better version of their personal self.
Yep, that's a great wrap up. For you guys that have been listening in, I hope that this has been, well, for me, it is a masterclass of what real leaders should do and shouldn't do. Really is. I've got bundles of notes just from this masterclass. And, it's a real privilege that we have someone like Garry here on the show because, again, to have insights, to have real great golden nuggets, and just for Garry to share some useful insights about his work as a former CEO, because I feel like it doesn't matter if you're running a small business or a multi-billion-dollar business, the fundamentals of leadership really don't change that much. Yeah, you're dealing with more people, you're dealing with more numbers, etc. But really the fundamentals don't really change. And I think that's become quite apparent from me and Garry's conversation. So first of all, Garry, I wanted to say thank you so much for spending a bit of time with us.
More than welcome, Adam. And you're right. The fundamentals are the same because at the end of the day, you're just dealing with people.
Exactly. So if any dumbass can do it, make sure that you go out, purchase this book, okay? And listen, I'm not in any commission structure, but it's a great book. Garry's a great guy. He has a great mission to follow. Make sure you follow over him on LinkedIn. We'll pull the links below. And from me and Garry, thanks so much. And one other thing as well, before we clock off for today, if you haven't had the opportunity, make sure that you check out. We are having early access to our new community for those that wish to scale up and exit from their businesses. So if you want to be part of a community that would like to share insights, biggest mistakes, etc., make sure you check out the link below. Anyway, from me and Garry, thank you so much, and speak to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Rinse knows that greatness takes time, but so does laundry. So Rinse will take your laundry and hand deliver it to your door expertly cleaned. And you can take the time pursuing your passions. Time once spent sorting and waiting, folding and queuing, now spent challenging and innovating and pushing your way to greatness. So pick up the Irish flute or those calligraphy pens or that daunting beef Wellington recipe card and leave the laundry to us. Rinse. It's time to be great.